The conference room on Europa Station buzzed with nervous energy, as diplomats, scientists, and military officials gathered around the massive holographic display. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the head of the table, her weathered face showing no emotion as she read the final transmission from the Galactic Council. The words that would change humanity's destiny forever glowed in cold blue letters above them. After careful consideration and extensive deliberation spanning 3 standard galactic cycles, the Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding the application of species designation humanity for membership in the Galactic Federation. Your application has been denied. Furthermore, your species is hereby prohibited from expanding beyond your current solar system boundaries until such time as you demonstrate the necessary cultural and technological maturity required for galactic citizenship. This prohibition will be enforced through economic sanctions, technological restrictions, and, if necessary, military intervention. The room fell silent. Months of preparation, years of hope, decades of dreaming about joining the galactic community had just been crushed with bureaucratic efficiency. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Earth's lead xenobiologist, was the first to speak. They cite our aggressive tendencies and unpredictable nature as primary concerns, she said, scrolling through the detailed rejection notice. Apparently our history of warfare, our competitive economic systems, and our tendency to question authority make us unsuitable for peaceful coexistence with other civilized species. General Marcus Webb, his military uniform crisp despite the late hour, leaned forward. "They're scared," he said bluntly. "Look at the specifics. They don't like that we develop faster-than-light travel independently. They don't like that we refuse to abandon our military structures. Most of all, they don't like that we won't follow their prescribed path of development." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. The Zarathi took 4,000 years to develop spaceflight after first contact with the Council. The Calvani spent 6 centuries in supervised cultural development before being granted limited system access. Every species that's joined the Federation has followed the same pattern: contact, submission, guided development, eventual membership after proving they can follow orders. "And we lasted exactly 18 months before telling them their guidance was unnecessary," added Dr. James Park, Earth's representative to the preliminary negotiations. I think the exact phrase used was, "Thanks, but we've got this." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Humanity had achieved in decades what most species needed millennia to accomplish. Their technological advancement was unprecedented, their adaptability remarkable, their creativity boundless. But these very qualities that made them exceptional also made them dangerous in the eyes of a galactic community built on order, hierarchy, and predictable progress. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, who had led the first successful faster-than-light expedition beyond the solar system, stood up from her seat at the far end of the table. "So what now? Do we spend the next few centuries proving we can be good little citizens? Do we abandon our expansion plans and wait for their permission?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every person in that room had dedicated their lives to pushing humanity forward, to breaking barriers and exploring new frontiers. The idea of stopping, of waiting for permission from species who had never shown humanity's drive or ingenuity, felt like asking them to stop breathing. Admiral Chen walked over to the massive windows that offered a view of Jupiter's roiling clouds. The gas giant filled half the sky, its great red spot glaring down like an angry eye. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when I was a kid, my grandmother used to tell me stories about the old country, about how our family left everything behind when they weren't wanted, when they were told they didn't belong. They didn't waste time trying to prove themselves to people who had already made up their minds. They just found somewhere better." Dr. Reeves looked up from her datapad. "Sarah, what are you thinking?" The Admiral turned back to face the room, and for the first time since the transmission had arrived, she smiled. It was a small smile, but it carried something that made every person in the room sit up straighter. It carried possibility. "I'm thinking about Andromeda," she said simply. The words hit the room like a lightning bolt. Andromeda, the nearest major galaxy to the Milky Way. Over 2 million light-years away, containing roughly 1 trillion stars and countless worlds that had never known the touch of the Galactic Council's rigid authority. "That's impossible," Dr. Park protested immediately. "The energy requirements alone would be staggering. We're talking about a journey that would take thousands of years even with our most advanced propulsion systems." But Captain Rodriguez was already pulling up star charts, her eyes bright with the same look she'd had when she'd volunteered for the first interstellar mission. "Not necessarily," she said, fingers flying over the holographic controls. "The Kepler project has been theoretical until now, but, Doctor, Yamamoto's team has been working on transgalactic propulsion for 5 years. The energy problem might actually be solvable. Dr. Yamamoto himself materialized on the communication screen from his laboratory on Mars. The elderly physicist looked exhausted but alert, his silver hair disheveled from what had clearly been a long day of calculations. "Kenji," Admiral Chen said, "how quickly could you scale up the transgalactic drive project?" The scientist's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "The theoretical framework is sound, but we're talking about moving entire populations across intergalactic space. The infrastructure requirements, the resource allocation, the sheer audacity of it. The audacity is exactly what we need," General Webb interrupted. "The Council thinks we're too unpredictable? Too aggressive? Too independent? Fine. Let's show them what unpredictable independence really looks like." Dr. Reeves was already running numbers on her tablet. Population distribution would be the biggest challenge. "We have over 12 billion people across Earth, Mars, Europa, Titan, and the asteroid belt colonies. Moving them all would require a fleet beyond anything we've ever imagined." "Not all at once," Admiral Chen said, her strategic mind already working through the logistics. "Vanguard groups first. Scientists, engineers, terraforming specialists, military support. Establish beachheads, set up infrastructure, then begin mass migration." Captain Rodriguez was practically vibrating with excitement. "The beauty of it is that they can't stop us. The Council's jurisdiction ends at our solar system. Once we're in open space, they have no legal authority to interfere." "Legal authority and practical capability are two different things," General Webb pointed out. "Their combined fleets could destroy any ship we send out." "Could they?" Dr. Yamamoto asked thoughtfully. "Our propulsion technology is already more advanced than anything in their arsenal. If we modify the transgalactic drives for tactical use," Admiral Chen held up a hand. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The goal isn't to fight the Council. The goal is to leave them behind so thoroughly that they become irrelevant." The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence was different. It wasn't the crushing weight of rejection anymore. It was the pregnant pause before a storm, the moment when everything balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything. Dr. Park leaned back in his chair. "You're talking about the largest migration in human history, abandoning the solar system that gave birth to our species. Leaving behind everything we've built." "We're not abandoning anything," Admiral Chen corrected. "We're expanding it, taking it with us, making it bigger than anyone thought possible." She gestured to the star charts that Captain Rodriguez had pulled up, showing the vast spiral of Andromeda in all its glory. "Look at it. 2.5 million light-years of space that belongs to no council, follows no predetermined path, answers to no authority but our own. A galaxy where we can build something new, something better." General Webb stood up, his decision made. "I'm in. My fleets, my personnel, whatever resources you need. The Mars colonies will support this," Dr. Yamamoto added from his screen. "We have the industrial capacity to begin ship construction immediately." One by one, the others voiced their commitment. Dr. Reeves volunteered her xenobiology teams for advanced scouting missions. Captain Rodriguez offered her navigation expertise for plotting the interstellar routes. Dr. Park, despite his initial skepticism, pledged the support of the diplomatic corps for managing the massive logistical challenges. As the meeting continued late into the European night, plans began to take shape. The Exodus Project, as it would come to be known, would be humanity's answer to galactic rejection. Not submission, not pleading for acceptance, but the most audacious middle finger in the history of spacefaring civilizations. They would leave the Milky Way behind entirely. They would take their aggressive tendencies and unpredictable nature to a galaxy where such qualities would be advantages, not liabilities. They would build something magnificent and free, something that answered to human ambition rather than alien bureaucracy. The Galactic Council had wanted them to prove they could follow orders. Instead, humanity would prove they didn't need to. Admiral Chen looked around the room at the faces of the people who would make this impossible dream reality. Scientists and soldiers, dreamers and pragmatists, all united by the simple human refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. "Gentlemen, ladies," she said, raising an imaginary glass in toast, "we're going to need a bigger boat." The laughter that filled the room carried a sound the galaxy had never heard before and would never hear again. It was the sound of a species that had just been told they couldn't do something and had decided to do it anyway on a scale that would redefine what impossible meant. Outside the windows of Europa Station, Jupiter continued its eternal dance, unaware that the small creatures crawling around its moons had just made a decision that would echo across galaxies. 6 months after the rejection, the solar system hummed with activity unlike anything in human history. Every shipyard from Earth orbit to the Outer Rim colonies worked around the clock, their construction bays filled with vessels that defied conventional spacecraft design. These weren't the sleek diplomatic ships humanity had built for council meetings or the efficient cargo haulers that moved goods between planets. These were Exodus ships built for one purpose, carrying human civilization across the void between galaxies. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the Titan shipyards, watching the construction of the flagship vessel that would lead humanity's greatest journey. The ship was massive beyond anything previously imagined, stretching nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull gleamed with the distinctive blue-white alloy that Dr. Yamamoto's team had developed specifically for transgalactic travel, designed to withstand the cosmic radiation and gravitational stresses of intergalactic space. "She's beautiful," said Chief Engineer Torres, joining Elena at the viewing window. "Hard to believe we designed and built her in 6 months." Elena nodded, still amazed at how quickly everything had come together once humanity had decided on its course. Human ingenuity, she mused. "Give us an impossible deadline and an unthinkable goal, and somehow we make it happen." The ship they were looking at, designated the UES Pioneer, was the first of 12 massive colony vessels that would carry the initial wave of emigrants to Andromeda. Each ship could house 50,000 people in comfortable living conditions for the multi-year journey, complete with hydroponic farms, manufacturing facilities, schools, hospitals, and recreational areas. They weren't just transport vehicles. They were self-contained cities designed to preserve human culture and capabilities during the long transit between galaxies. But the most remarkable feature of these ships wasn't their size or their living accommodations. It was the revolutionary propulsion system that hummed quietly in their engineering sections. Dr. Yamamoto's transgalactic drive had evolved far beyond its original theoretical framework. The breakthrough had come when they stopped trying to move faster than light and instead focused on moving through spaces where distance itself became meaningful in human terms. "How's the crew selection coming along?" Elena asked, as they watched automated construction mechs install the final exterior plating on Pioneer's hull. "Better than expected," Torres replied, consulting his data tablet. "We thought we'd have to draft people or use lottery systems, but volunteer applications are running 3-to-1. Everyone wants to be part of this." The phenomenon had surprised even the mission planners. When the Exodus project had been announced publicly, they'd expected fear, resistance, maybe even panic. Instead, they'd gotten the largest voluntary mass migration in human history. Families were signing up together, entire communities petitioning to be included, and skilled professionals leaving comfortable lives behind for the chance to help build something new. Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief sociologist, had called it pioneer syndrome taken to its logical extreme. Humans, she argued, were a species defined by their need to explore, to push boundaries, to see what was over the next hill. The Galactic Council's rejection hadn't crushed that spirit. It had liberated it from any remaining constraints. "Commander Vasquez to the bridge," came the announcement over the shipyard's communication system. Priority transmission from Admiral Chen. Elena made her way through the familiar corridors of the shipyard, noting how different the atmosphere felt compared to 6 months ago. Then there had been uncertainty, confusion, even despair. Now there was purpose. Every person she passed wore the focused expression of someone working toward a goal they believed in completely. The bridge of the shipyard's command center was a hub of coordinated activity. Dozens of technicians monitored construction progress across all 12 colony ships, while logistics coordinators managed the flow of materials and personnel throughout the solar system. At the center of it all, Admiral Chen's image flickered on the main communications screen. "Elena," the Admiral said without preamble, "we've got company." The main display shifted to show a tactical overview of the solar system. Elena could see the normal traffic patterns of human ships going about their business, but highlighted in red were 3 new contacts approaching from the direction of Alpha Centauri. "Council ships?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. "A diplomatic vessel escorted by 2 heavy cruisers," Admiral Chen confirmed. "The UCS Meridian flying Council diplomatic flags. They've requested permission to approach Earth for what they call urgent negotiations regarding recent human activities." The Council ships were impressive by galactic standards, their sleek designs reflecting centuries of refinement and standardization. But even she could see they weren't prepared for what they were about to encounter. "I take it they don't know about the Exodus fleet yet?" Admiral Chen's smile was predatory. "Long-range scans suggest they're expecting to find a demoralized, defeated Earth ready to negotiate for reduced sanctions. They have no idea what we've been building out here. The next few hours passed in a tense ballet of diplomatic protocol and military posturing. The Council ships were given permission to approach Earth, but they were escorted by a squadron of human vessels that showcased the remarkable technological advances of the past 6 months. The escort ships were smaller than the Council vessels, but their hull configurations and energy signatures suggested capabilities that weren't on any galactic registry. Elena found herself on Earth for the first time in months, standing in the United Earth Government's primary conference chamber as humanity prepared to receive its uninvited guests. The chamber had been modified for the occasion, its walls lined with holographic displays showing real-time progress reports from construction sites throughout the solar system. The message was subtle but unmistakable. Humanity wasn't just surviving their rejection, they were thriving because of it. The Council delegation consisted of 3 representatives from major galactic powers: Ambassador Veltar of the Hexarchy, a tall crystalline being whose species valued order and predictability above all else; Minister Korthan of the Stellar Federation, whose scaled reptilian features reflected his people's patient, methodical approach to galactic politics; and Senior Advisor Quintel of the Trade Collective, whose multiple limbs and quick darting movements suggested the commercial focus that had made his species incredibly wealthy. "Honorable humans," Ambassador Veltar began, his translated words carrying the formal inflection his species used for diplomatic encounters. "We come bearing an opportunity for reconsideration. The Council has reviewed your application and circumstances, and we are prepared to offer a modified membership track." Elena exchanged glances with Admiral Chen and the other human representatives. This was exactly what they'd expected. The Council, seeing humanity's rapid technological advancement and unified response to rejection, was having second thoughts about leaving such a dynamic species outside their influence. "What kind of modified track?" asked Secretary General Morrison, Earth's senior diplomat. Minister Korthan leaned forward in his specialized chair. "Provisional membership status with a structured development program spanning only 2 centuries instead of the traditional 5. Shared technology exchanges, limited expansion rights to 3 additional systems, and full membership upon successful completion of cultural integration assessments." It was, by galactic standards, an incredibly generous offer. Species typically waited millennia for such opportunities. The Council was essentially offering humanity a fast track to everything they had originally sought. Senior Advisor Quintel's multiple eyes focused on the human delegation. "We understand there has been some industrial activity in your system since our initial decision. We are prepared to overlook any minor violations of expansion restrictions in exchange for cessation of unauthorized development." The pause that followed was loaded with meaning. Through the conference chamber's windows, the Council delegation could see the orbital construction facilities where humanity's impossible ships were taking shape. They could detect the energy signatures of propulsion systems beyond their technological understanding. They had come to offer humanity a seat at their table, only to discover that humanity had already built their own table and was getting ready to leave the restaurant entirely. Admiral Chen stood slowly, her movement drawing the attention of every being in the room. "Ambassadors, we appreciate your offer. Truly we do. 6 months ago this would have been everything we hoped for." She gestured toward the windows, where the lights of a dozen massive construction projects twinkled like stars against the black of space. "But things have changed. We've changed. You gave us something incredibly valuable when you rejected our application." The Council representatives shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't proceeding according to their expectations. "You gave us clarity," Admiral Chen continued. "For the first time in our history, every human being understood exactly where we stood. We weren't part of your galactic community, and we never would be, no matter how much we changed ourselves to fit your expectations. Secretary General Morrison picked up the thread, so we stopped trying to fit your expectations. We started meeting our own instead. This unauthorized construction must cease immediately," Ambassador Veltar said, his crystalline structure resonating with harmonic distress. "The implications for galactic stability are unacceptable. No species has ever attempted development on this scale without Council oversight." "And that's exactly the problem," Elena said, speaking for the first time since the delegation had arrived. "Every species in your Federation follows the same path, meets the same milestones, develops along the same timeline. You've created a galaxy of conformity." She activated a holographic display showing the construction statistics from the past 6 months. Ships, habitats, manufacturing facilities, technological breakthroughs, all developing at a pace that defied galactic norms. "Look at what we accomplished in 6 months of independence compared to 18 months of trying to follow your guidance. The numbers speak for themselves." Minister Corthan studied the data with growing alarm. This rate of development is unstable, dangerous. Without proper oversight, without the wisdom of established galactic protocols, such rapid advancement leads to catastrophe. For whom? Admiral Chen asked pointedly. Your protocols have worked well for species that value stability over growth, order over innovation. But we're not those species. Senior Advisor Quintel's commercial instincts were the first to grasp the true implications of what the humans were suggesting. You're planning to leave? He said, his voice carrying an electronic harmony that indicated shock. You're actually planning to abandon the galaxy entirely. The silence that followed confirmed his assessment. The council representatives stared at the human delegation with expressions that translated across species lines as complete bewilderment. Impossible, Ambassador Veltar said flatly. No species has ever attempted transgalactic migration. The energy requirements alone would exceed the total output of a dozen star systems. Admiral Chen smiled, and it was the same smile she'd worn 6 months ago when the Exodus Project had been born. Ambassador, with respect, that's exactly the kind of thinking that convinced us we needed to find our own path. She activated another display, this one showing a detailed schematic of the transgalactic drive system. The council representatives studied it in growing amazement, their scientific instruments detecting energy patterns and theoretical frameworks beyond anything in their collective knowledge. You're really going to do it, Minister Corthan said, his scaled features shifting into an expression that might have been respect. You're going to attempt the impossible. We're going to succeed at the inevitable, Secretary General Morrison corrected. Human history is full of people being told that something was impossible right up until the moment someone did it anyway. The council delegation offered increasingly desperate alternatives. Immediate full membership, technological exchanges that would have seemed like magic months earlier, territorial concessions that would have given humanity dominion over entire sectors of the galaxy, but humanity had moved beyond wanting a place at the galactic table. They were building their own galaxy now, one where innovation wasn't constrained by committee decisions and exploration wasn't limited by bureaucratic timelines. As the council ships departed Earth, carrying news that would shake the galactic community to its foundations, construction continued throughout the solar system. 12 massive colony ships neared completion, their crews selected and trained for the greatest journey any species had ever attempted. Elena stood once again in the observation deck of the Titan shipyards, watching the final preparations on the UES Pioneer. In 3 months, she would stand on that ship's bridge as it led humanity into the space between galaxies. In 5 years, if everything went according to plan, she would watch from Andromeda as the first human cities rose on alien worlds that had never known the touch of galactic authority. The Council had excluded Earth, thinking they were protecting their ordered galaxy from human unpredictability. Instead, they had given humanity the greatest gift possible, absolute freedom to become everything they were capable of becoming. And they were about to discover that human capability had no upper limit. The day of departure dawned clear and brilliant across the solar system, though dawn was a relative concept when dealing with 12 massive colony ships positioned throughout human space. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Pioneer, humanity's flagship for the greatest journey in their history, watching the final countdown displays as they approached the moment that would change everything. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the focused efficiency that had become humanity's trademark during the 9 months of preparation. Navigator Chen plotted the complex gravitational trajectory that would slingshot them past Jupiter and toward the galactic edge. Engineer Patel monitored the transgalactic drive systems that hummed with barely contained power. Communications Officer Rodriguez coordinated with the 11 other colony ships spread throughout the system, each carrying 50,000 volunteers toward an uncertain but limitless future. All ships report ready for departure, Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying the excitement that rippled through every human settlement. The Perseverance is leading our science fleet from Mars orbit. The Determination has cleared the asteroid belt mining stations. The Resolution is escorting our manufacturing vessels from the Jupiter system. Captain Santos nodded, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Behind them lay Earth, Mars, the belt colonies, and everything humanity had built in their home system. Ahead lay 2.5 million light-years of empty space, followed by a galaxy that belonged to no council and answered to no authority but human ambition. Final transmission from Admiral Chen, Rodriguez continued, patching through the signal from Earth Command. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen, her expression combining pride, determination, and the faintest hint of sadness at watching her species take this irrevocable step away from home. "Captains, crews, and passengers of the First Fleet," she began, her voice carrying to every ship in the convoy. "You carry with you not just the hopes of humanity, but humanity itself. You are not refugees fleeing persecution or exiles cast out from home. You are pioneers, choosing to build something magnificent and free." She paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see every face among the 600,000 people about to depart for Andromeda. "The galaxy told us we weren't ready to join their civilization. Today, we show them they weren't ready for ours. Go build something worthy of human dreams." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in a silence that carried the weight of finality. In 60 seconds, the first fleet would begin acceleration toward the galactic edge. In 18 months, they would reach the point where the Milky Way's gravitational field released its hold, and the transgalactic drives could engage for the longest journey any living beings had ever attempted. 30 seconds to departure, Navigator Chen announced. Captain Santos opened the fleet-wide communication channel, knowing that her words would be the last thing people heard before leaving their birth galaxy behind forever. "All ships, this is Pioneer. Today we become the first species in galactic history to choose our own destiny over the limitations others would impose upon us. We leave behind a galaxy that told us we needed permission to be great. We journey toward one where the only limits are the ones we accept for ourselves." She looked around the bridge at the faces of her crew, seeing reflected in their expressions the same mixture of anticipation and determination that filled her own heart. "Engage transgalactic drives. Take us home." The universe changed. It didn't happen gradually or with the smooth acceleration of traditional space travel. One moment the first fleet floated in the familiar space of the solar system, surrounded by the gentle gravitational embrace of the star that had given birth to human civilization. The next moment, they were somewhere else entirely, wrapped in energies that redefined what space and time meant on an intergalactic scale. Through the viewports of every ship, the Milky Way shrank from an infinite expanse of stars to a bright spiral visible in its entirety. Behind them, their home galaxy glowed like a cosmic lighthouse, its billions of stars reduced to a single point of light that contained everything humanity had ever known or built. Ahead lay the true void. Not the comfortable darkness between stars within a galaxy, but the absolute emptiness between galaxies, where space itself stretched so thin that conventional physics became theoretical suggestions rather than reliable rules. This was the domain that no galactic species had ever attempted to cross, the barrier that had kept civilizations confined to their birth galaxies since the dawn of time. "Drive systems operating within normal parameters," Engineer Patel reported, his voice tight with concentration as he monitored readouts that described forces no human had ever experienced. "We're maintaining course and speed toward Andromeda. Estimated travel time remains 4 years, 7 months. 4 years and 7 months. Less time than it would have taken the Council to process a single modification to humanity's membership application. Dr. Yamamoto's revolutionary drive systems were carrying 600,000 people across a gap that should have required millions of years to traverse. As the weeks passed into months, life aboard the colony ships settled into patterns that reflected the unique nature of their journey. These weren't military vessels with rigid hierarchies, nor were they passenger liners focused on comfort and entertainment. They were traveling cities, complete communities designed to preserve human culture and capability during the years between galaxies. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as Pioneer's chief science officer, walked through the ship's main habitat section during what the chronometers designated as afternoon. The artificial sky overhead projected a perfect simulation of Earth, sun, and clouds, while the carefully maintained gravity and atmosphere made it easy to forget they were hurtling through intergalactic space at velocities that made light itself seem sluggish. Children played in the parks that occupied the ship's central sections, their laughter echoing off bulkheads that contained more advanced technology than most galactic civilizations possessed. Adults tended hydroponic gardens that would feed future generations, while others worked in manufacturing centers that produced everything from clothing to complex electronics. Schools taught lessons that combined human history with cutting-edge science, preparing young minds for the challenges of building civilization in a galaxy that had never known sentient life. But it was in the research sections where humanity's true nature revealed itself most clearly. Instead of simply maintaining their technology during the journey, human scientists and engineers were improving it. The constraints of intergalactic travel had sparked innovations that would have taken decades to develop under normal circumstances. "Show me what you've discovered," Dr. Vasquez said to Dr. Kim Park, who had emerged as one of the expedition's most brilliant theoretical physicists. Park led her to a laboratory where the walls were covered with holographic displays showing mathematical equations that seemed to bend space around themselves. We're not just traveling through intergalactic space, he explained, manipulating the displays to show three-dimensional models of their journey. We're learning how to manipulate it. The implications were staggering. The transgalactic drive systems weren't just propelling them toward Andromeda. They were teaching humanity how to treat intergalactic space as navigable terrain rather than an insurmountable barrier. Elena, Dr. Park continued, his excitement barely contained, we're developing the ability to travel between any galaxies in the local cluster. Andromeda won't be an exile destination. It will be the first stop on a journey that could span the entire observable universe. Meanwhile, in the ship's communications center, an equally remarkable discovery was taking place. Communications Officer Rodriguez had been monitoring transmissions from the Milky Way, tracking the galactic community's response to humanity's departure. Captain, she reported during the daily senior staff meeting, we're receiving some interesting signals from our former neighbors. The main display showed a compilation of intercepted transmissions, their origins ranging from Council headquarters to the homeworlds of major galactic powers. The content was illuminating. The Hexarchy is demanding a full Council investigation into how humanity developed transgalactic capabilities so quickly, Rodriguez reported. The Stellar Federation is calling for immediate research into similar technologies. And the Trade Collective? She paused, a slight smile crossing her features. The Trade Collective is offering to buy the technology from us. Captain Santos laughed, the sound carrying a note of satisfaction that resonated throughout the bridge. They want to follow us. It gets better, Rodriguez continued. We're detecting increased industrial activity throughout the galaxy. 17 different species have initiated crash programs to develop their own intergalactic travel capabilities. The Council is fractured over whether to encourage or prohibit these efforts. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward in her chair. They're trying to copy what we did. Without understanding why we did it, Captain Santos observed. They're focused on the technology, not the mindset that created it. The truth was becoming clear as reports filtered in from across the Milky Way. The galactic species were attempting to duplicate humanity's achievements, but they were approaching the challenge with the same bureaucratic, committee-driven methodologies that had made their development so slow in the first place. The Hexarchy had assigned the project to a commission that spent 6 months debating the theoretical ethics of intergalactic travel before approving preliminary research. The Stellar Federation had distributed the work among 47 different research institutions, each jealously guarding their progress from the others. The Trade Collective had launched a competitive bidding process to determine which corporations would be allowed to attempt development. They don't understand, Engineer Patel observed during one of their regular briefings. They think this is about technology, but it's about will. They're trying to innovate using the same systems that prevented innovation for millennia. As the months passed, humanity's journey continued through the cosmic void, while the galaxy they had left behind struggled with the implications of their departure. The Council had intended to exclude a single troublesome species from their ordered community. Instead, they had triggered a galaxy-wide crisis as every major civilization questioned whether they too might be capable of choosing their own path. But the most significant developments were happening aboard the human fleet itself. The journey that was supposed to take 4.5 years was accelerating as the ship's systems evolved and improved. Dr. Yamamoto's original drive technology had been revolutionary. What humanity was developing during the journey was beyond revolutionary. It was transformative. We could be there in 3 years, Dr. Park reported during one of their regular science briefings. Maybe less. The drives are adapting to intergalactic space, becoming more efficient as they learn the environment. Captain Santos studied the updated projections, feeling a familiar thrill at the confirmation of what she had suspected for months. Human technology wasn't just functional, it was adaptive. It learned. It grew. It became better than its creators had originally imagined possible. Any word from the other fleets? She asked, referring to the second and third fleets that had departed in the months following the first fleet's launch. The second fleet launched successfully and is already showing improved drive efficiency based on our transmitted data, Rodriguez reported. The third fleet is using completely redesigned ships that incorporate everything we've learned. They'll actually arrive before we do if current trends continue. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Humanity had begun their exodus as refugees from galactic rejection. They were arriving as the pioneers of a new kind of civilization, one that treated the impossible as merely another engineering challenge to be solved. As the Pioneer continued its journey toward Andromeda, carrying its precious cargo of human dreams and determination, the Milky Way grew smaller behind them while their destination grew larger ahead. But the most important change was invisible to the eye, and immeasurable by any instrument. Humanity was no longer the species that had applied for Council membership 18 months ago. They weren't even the species that had been rejected 9 months ago. They were something new, something that had been forged in the decision to choose freedom over acceptance, possibility over security. They were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a civilization that defined its own limits. 3 years and 2 months after departing the Milky Way, Captain Santos stood before the greatest sight in human history. Through the massive viewing windows of Pioneer's observation deck, the Andromeda Galaxy filled the entire sky, its spiral arms stretching across the heavens like cosmic rivers of light. 2.5 trillion stars waited ahead, their worlds untouched by galactic councils or bureaucratic oversight. Final approach to target system confirmed, Navigator Chen announced from the bridge. The Kepler 442 analog system shows all green readings. 3 terrestrial worlds, 2 gas giants, stable star with optimal output characteristics. The target system had been selected from thousands of candidates during the journey, its characteristics matching Earth's solar system closely enough to ensure human compatibility while offering enough differences to spark innovation. Most importantly, it showed no signs of existing intelligent life, making humanity's claim to it clean and uncomplicated. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined Captain Santos at the observation deck, carrying a datapad filled with reports that still seemed impossible despite months of confirmation. The second fleet arrived yesterday, she reported, her voice carrying the amazement that had become common among the expedition's leadership. The third fleet will be here next week. The fourth fleet is only 6 months behind us, and they're using drive systems that are twice as efficient as ours were at launch. Captain Santos nodded, still processing the implications of humanity's accelerating capabilities. Each fleet had improved upon the last, incorporating lessons learned during the journey and innovations developed in response to intergalactic travel challenges. The species that had arrived in Andromeda was already fundamentally different from the one that had departed the Milky Way. "Any word from home?" she asked, knowing that home now meant something different than it had when they began their journey. "Regular transmissions from Earth show continued fleet departures," Vasquez replied, consulting her datapad. "The 10th through 15th fleets are using a new generation of ships that can make the journey in 18 months. Admiral Chen estimates that within 5 years we'll have over 3 million people in Andromeda." The numbers were staggering. What had begun as humanity's largest migration was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history. The voluntary abandonment of an entire galaxy by a spacefaring civilization. Earth wasn't just sending exploration fleets to Andromeda, they were relocating human civilization itself. And the Council? Captain Santos asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Dr. Vasquez's expression shifted to something that might have been sympathy. "Chaos. The Hexarchy has withdrawn from Council participation entirely, demanding that their sovereignty be respected while they develop their own intergalactic capabilities. The Stellar Federation has split into 3 separate factions, each pursuing different approaches to transgalactic travel. The Trade Collective is offering partnership deals to anyone with working drive technology. The impact on galactic civilization had been even more dramatic than humanity had predicted. The sight of a single species successfully executing an intergalactic migration had shattered the fundamental assumptions that held the galactic community together. If humanity could choose their own destiny, why couldn't others? If the Council's guidance wasn't necessary for species development, what was the Council's purpose? "Captain," came the announcement from the bridge, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the advanced scout teams." Captain Santos and Dr. Vasquez made their way to the bridge, where Communications Officer Rodriguez was coordinating with the small vessels that had preceded the main fleet to Andromeda. These scouts had been exploring the target galaxy for weeks, mapping systems and identifying optimal locations for initial colonization. "Report from Scout Group Alpha," Rodriguez announced, her excitement barely contained. "They've confirmed 7 systems with Earth-analogal worlds suitable for immediate colonization. Scout Group Beta has identified 3 systems with unique mineral compositions that would revolutionize our manufacturing capabilities. And Scout Group Gamma." She paused, her expression shifting to something approaching awe. "Scout Group Gamma has found something extraordinary." The main display activated, showing a star chart of a region roughly 500 light-years from their intended destination. At the center of the chart, highlighted in pulsing blue, was something that made every person on the bridge stop what they were doing and stare. "Is that what I think it is?" Captain Santos asked quietly. Vasquez was already running calculations on her datapad, her scientific instruments confirming what their eyes told them. "It's a megastructure, artificial. And it's massive." The object on the display was a ring surrounding a star, its dimensions suggesting an engineering project beyond anything in recorded galactic history. The ring was roughly the diameter of Earth's orbit around Sol, but it wasn't solid. Instead, it appeared to be a complex lattice of materials and energy fields, designed to capture and redirect stellar output on a scale that dwarfed any known civilization. "Any signs of current inhabitants?" Captain Santos asked. "Negative," Rodriguez reported, consulting the scout data. "All scans show the structure is inactive. Preliminary analysis suggests it's been dormant for at least 10,000 years, possibly much longer." Engineer Patel looked up from his console where he had been analyzing the structure's energy signatures. "Captain, the technology involved in building something like this is centuries beyond anything we've seen. Maybe millennia. The implications hung in the air like a challenge." Humanity had come to Andromeda expecting to be the first advanced civilization in the galaxy. Instead, they had discovered evidence of predecessors whose capabilities exceeded even their own remarkable achievements. "Set course for the megastructure," Captain Santos ordered. "Alert the fleet. We're about to make first contact with our new neighbors, even if they've been gone for 10,000 years." The journey to the ancient megastructure took 6 days, during which speculation and analysis filled every conversation aboard every ship in the fleet. The structure's design suggested a civilization that had mastered stellar engineering on a scale that made galactic civilizations look like children playing with simple tools. As they approached, the true scope of the ancient achievement became clear. The ring wasn't just a single structure, but a complex network of interconnected platforms, each one larger than a small moon. Energy conduits that looked like crystallized lightning connected the platforms, creating patterns that suggested both incredible functionality and remarkable aesthetic sense. "It's beautiful, Doctor," Vasquez breathed as they drew close enough to see individual details. The ancient builders had created something that was simultaneously the greatest engineering achievement in recorded history and a work of art that spanned stellar distances. The platforms flowed into each other with organic curves that caught and reflected starlight in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Initial scans complete," Navigator Chen reported. "The structure appears to be a stellar energy collection and redistribution system. At peak operation, it would have been capable of channeling the total output of the star for industrial use." Captain Santos studied the readings, trying to imagine the civilization that had built such a marvel. "What happened to them?" "Unknown," Chen replied. "There's no evidence of warfare, no signs of catastrophic failure. The structure appears to have been deliberately shut down and abandoned." Park, joining the conversation from the science station, offered a theory that sent chills through everyone on the bridge. What if they didn't disappear? What if they left? The question hung in the space between them, carrying implications that redefined their entire understanding of what they had discovered. "Left for where?" Dr. Vasquez asked. Dr. Park gestured toward the cosmic display showing their location within Andromeda. "If you could build something like this, would you limit yourself to one galaxy?" The concept was staggering. The ancient builders of the megastructure might have been the first intergalactic civilization, pioneers who had explored beyond Andromeda just as humanity had traveled beyond the Milky Way. They might have left behind their great works in search of even greater challenges and opportunities. "Captain," Rodriguez announced, "we're receiving a signal from the structure." Every person on the bridge froze. The ancient megastructure, dormant for millennia, was responding to their presence. "What kind of signal?" Captain Santos asked. It's a greeting," Rodriguez replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Transmitted in mathematical progressions, but it's definitely a welcome message. And Captain, it's adapting its transmission to match our communication protocols in real time. The ancient builders had left behind more than just their engineering marvels. They had created systems designed to recognize and communicate with other civilizations, automated protocols that could wait for thousands of years before activating when new intelligence arrived in their galaxy. Over the following days, humanity's first contact with the legacy of Andromeda's ancient builders unfolded in ways that exceeded every prediction. The megastructure wasn't just a monument to vanished greatness, it was a gift, a library, and an invitation all combined into one incredible package. The automated systems began sharing information as soon as they confirmed humanity's status as a spacefaring civilization. Technical specifications for technologies that solve problems humanity hadn't even recognized yet. Historical records of a civilization that had spanned multiple galaxies before choosing to explore beyond the local cluster entirely. And most remarkably, a message from the builders themselves, recorded eons ago for exactly this moment. The message appeared as a holographic projection in Pioneer's main conference room, showing a being that looked remarkably similar to humans despite having evolved in an entirely different galaxy. Their form was tall and elegant, with features that suggested both great intelligence and profound kindness. "Greetings, young travelers," the figure said, its words automatically translated into every human language simultaneously. "If you are receiving this message, you have achieved what we achieved long ago, the courage to leave your birth galaxy in search of something greater than safety and conformity." Captain Santos and her senior staff watched in fascination as the ancient being continued. "We are the architects, and we built these works not as monuments to our greatness, but as gifts for those who would come after us. We have learned that the universe is vast beyond imagination, filled with wonders that can only be discovered by those brave enough to seek them. When you are ready, when you have made Andromeda truly your own, you will find our gifts throughout this galaxy. Each one will prepare you for the next step of your journey." The figure paused, seeming to look directly at each member of the human crew, despite having been recorded before humanity had even developed fire. "The galaxy you left behind told you that you were not ready for their civilization. We tell you that their civilization was not ready for you. Build something worthy of your courage, young architects. The universe is waiting to see what wonders you will create." As the message ended and the holographic figure faded away, Captain Santos felt a transformation taking place not just within herself, but within humanity as a whole. They had come to Andromeda as exiles from galactic civilization. They were discovering their role as inheritors of something far greater. The Council had excluded Earth from their small, ordered galaxy. The ancient architects had welcomed humanity to a universe without limits. 5 years after humanity's first arrival in Andromeda, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of New Geneva Station, orbiting the first world that humans had made truly their own. Through the massive viewports, she could see the blue-green marble that humanity had named Nova Terra, its continents dotted with the lights of cities that blended human architecture with technologies inherited from the ancient architects. The transformation had been remarkable beyond anything the original Exodus planners had dared to imagine. What had begun as a desperate flight from galactic rejection had become the greatest renaissance in human history. 27 colony worlds now bore the footprints of human civilization, each one unique, each one pushing the boundaries of what humanity thought possible. "Admiral," called Commander Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving the weekly status report from the Milky Way monitoring station." Chen walked over to review the data, still amazed by what humanity had accomplished in such a short time. The monitoring station, positioned at the edge of Andromeda's gravitational influence, maintained constant surveillance of their birth galaxy using sensors that made the Council's most advanced technology look primitive. "How are our old neighbors doing?" she asked, though the reports had been remarkably consistent for months. "The galactic economy is in complete collapse," Torres reported, highlighting relevant sections of the analysis. "The Hexarchy has abandoned most of their outer colonies to focus resources on intergalactic research. The Stellar Federation exists in name only. Their member species are pursuing independent development programs. The Trade Collective has lost 70% of their commercial networks." Chen nodded, feeling neither satisfaction nor regret at the news. The Council's rigid civilization had been built on the assumption that controlled incremental progress was the only safe path forward. Humanity's explosive departure had proven that assumption catastrophically wrong, and the galaxy was still reeling from the implications. "Any successful intergalactic expeditions from Council species?" she asked. 3 attempts so far," Torres replied, calling up a tactical display. "The Hexarchy launched a prototype vessel 18 months ago. It made it approximately 15% of the way to Andromeda before suffering drive failure. The crew was recovered, but the ship was a total loss. The Kalvani tried a different approach," he continued, using technology they claimed was based on our original designs. Their ship exploded during initial acceleration. "And the Zerothi?" Torres paused, his expression shifting to something that might have been pity. "The Zerothi?" Chen prompted. "The Zerathi petition arrived last month. They're requesting permission to join human expeditions to Andromeda. Apparently they've concluded that independent development is impossible for species trained in Council methodologies. The irony was profound. The same galactic powers that had excluded humanity for being too independent were now begging for inclusion in humanity's independent civilization. They had spent millennia learning to follow orders and conform to established patterns. Breaking free of those mental constraints was proving impossible. "What was our response?" Chen asked. "The same response we've given to all such requests," Torres replied. "We'll welcome anyone who can make the journey on their own. The door is open, but we won't carry passengers." It was a policy that reflected humanity's fundamental philosophy. Freedom couldn't be given, it had to be taken, Independence couldn't be granted, it had to be earned. Any species that could break free of council thinking enough to reach Andromeda under their own power would be welcomed as equals. Anyone who needed humanity to rescue them from galactic civilization wasn't ready for what humanity was building. "Admiral," came a new voice from across the command center. "Priority transmission from the Architect Site's archaeological team." Chen turned her attention to Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, now serving as humanity's chief xenoarchaeologist and the leading expert on the ancient civilization that had preceded them in Andromeda. Over the past 5 years, humanity had discovered dozens of architect sites throughout the galaxy, each one revealing new aspects of the vanished civilization's incredible achievements. "What have they found now, Elizabeth?" Chen asked. Dr. Reeves activated the main holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of Andromeda with highlighted points indicating known architect sites. But the new discovery was different from anything they had found before. "This is the Nexus," Dr. Reeves said, her voice carrying the excitement of someone who had just made the discovery of several lifetimes. "We found it in the Andromeda core region, hidden within a gravitational anomaly that masked its energy signature." The image on the display defied comprehension. The Nexus was a structure that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its form shifting and flowing as the sensors struggled to capture something that operated according to physics beyond human understanding. It was clearly artificial, clearly the product of incredible intelligence, but it was unlike anything in the previous architect sites. "What does it do?" Chen asked, though she suspected the answer would be as remarkable as the structure itself. "It's a gateway," Reeves replied simply, "not just between star systems or even between points within Andromeda. The Nexus is designed to enable travel between galactic clusters, between the largest structures in the observable universe. The implications hit the command center like a shockwave. The ancient architects hadn't just mastered intergalactic travel. They had developed the ability to journey between the vast collections of galaxies that form the fundamental architecture of the cosmos itself. "The structure is responding to our presence, Doctor," Reeves continued, "just like the other architect sites. It's offering to share its knowledge with us, to teach us how to take the next step in our journey." Chen stared at the display, trying to process the magnitude of what humanity was being offered. They had come to Andromeda as refugees from galactic rejection. The architects were offering them the keys to the entire universe. "There's more," Dr. Reeves said, activating another section of the display. "The Nexus contains historical records of the architect's journey." "Admiral, they didn't originate in Andromeda either. The revelation transformed everything humanity thought they knew about their predecessors. The architects had been migrants themselves, refugees from some ancient catastrophe, or simply explorers driven by the same restless curiosity that had brought humanity across the intergalactic void." "Where did they come from?" Chen asked. "The Sculptor Galaxy," Dr. Reeves replied, highlighting a point of light roughly 12 million light-years away. "They fled their birth galaxy after their equivalent of our council tried to constrain their development. Sound familiar?" Chen laughed, the sound carrying a note of cosmic irony that resonated throughout the command center. The pattern was apparently universal. Young, dynamic civilizations eventually outgrew the limitations imposed by older, more conservative societies. The architects had faced their own version of the Galactic Council millions of years ago, and their response had been identical to humanity's. "How far did they go?" Chen asked. "How much of the universe did they explore?" "Doctor..." Reeves manipulated the display to show a map of the local galactic cluster, with hundreds of points of light indicating galaxies. Nearly a quarter of them showed indicators suggesting architect presence at some point in their history. "They spread across the entire local group," Dr. Reeves reported. "Hundreds of galaxies, millions of worlds, billions of years of exploration and discovery. And Admiral, based on the patterns in their historical records, they're still out there." "Still exploring?" Chen asked. "Still growing, Doctor?" Reeves corrected. "The architects didn't just master intergalactic travel, they mastered intergalactic civilization. They became something that exists on a cosmic scale, too large and too dynamic to be contained within any single galaxy or even any single galactic cluster." Chen walked back to the viewport, looking out at Nova Terra and the constellation of human settlements that surrounded it. 5 years ago, humanity had been a single galaxy species begging for acceptance from a council of other single galaxy civilizations. Now they stood on the threshold of following the architects into the largest adventure possible, becoming a truly cosmic civilization. "Any word from Earth?" she asked, knowing that their birth world continued to coordinate the ongoing exodus from the Milky Way. "The latest fleet departed yesterday," Commander Torres reported. 200 ships carrying 4 million people, using drive systems that can make the journey in 8 months. Earth estimates that within 10 years there will be more humans in Andromeda than remain in our birth galaxy. And the Council? Still trying to stop the Exodus, Torres replied. They've declared human space travel a threat to galactic stability and are attempting to blockade the remaining Earth settlements. It's not going well for them. Chen smiled, remembering the conversations from 5 years ago when Council representatives had threatened military intervention if humanity didn't cease their unauthorized development. The Council had discovered what happened when a civilization built for conformity tried to constrain a species designed for breakthrough. Human technology had advanced so far beyond galactic standards that Council threats were simply irrelevant. Their most advanced warships couldn't match the defensive capabilities of human cargo vessels, much less the exploration ships that had made Andromeda a second home for humanity. Admiral, Dr. Reeves called, the Nexus is offering to activate. Chen turned back to the display, where the impossible structure was pulsing with energies that suggested vast mechanisms preparing for operation. Activate for what purpose? To take volunteers on the first trans-cluster expedition, Dr. Reeves replied. The Nexus can transport a small fleet to the Virgo cluster, where architect records suggest there are civilizations that have achieved what we're trying to achieve. The offer was breathtaking. Humanity could skip millions of years of development by meeting species that had already mastered cosmic-scale civilization. They could learn from civilizations that had solved problems humanity didn't even know existed yet. But Chen found herself hesitating, not from fear but from a strange sense of pride. Humanity had made it this far by refusing shortcuts, by insisting on earning their achievements rather than having them granted by others. What do you recommend, Doctor? She asked. Dr. Reeves considered the question carefully before responding. I recommend we decline the Nexus transportation, but accept the navigation data. Let us find our own way to the Virgo cluster, just as we found our own way to Andromeda. Chen nodded, feeling the rightness of the decision resonate through every fiber of her being. Humanity would continue to forge their own path, to build their own solutions, to prove themselves worthy of cosmic citizenship through achievement rather than inheritance. Send word to all human settlements, she ordered. Begin preparation for the next phase of human expansion. We're going to the Virgo cluster, but we're going as humans, using human technology and human determination. As the orders went out to the 27 worlds that humanity now called home, Chen reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. The Galactic Council had excluded Earth, thinking they were protecting their galaxy from human unpredictability. Instead, they had unleashed humanity on the entire universe. In the distance, the lights of Nova Terra twinkled like stars, each one representing lives and dreams that would have been impossible under Council rule. Children were growing up who would never know the limitations that had constrained previous generations. Scientists were making discoveries that redefined what was possible. Engineers were building wonders that made the ancient architect sites look like practice exercises. And somewhere in the vast cosmos beyond Andromeda, other civilizations were looking toward the growing light of human expansion and recognizing something they had been waiting for, the arrival of a species that refused to accept that anything was impossible. The galaxy had excluded Earth. Humanity had claimed the universe.